Our environment. It's the base of everything and what keeps us alive. It's crucial to our quality of life, and not all of us are given equal living conditions. Neighborhoods are segregated, so poorer people of color tend to find housing in more polluted areas, which is a prime example of environmental racism. Highways divide neighborhoods, making sure that there is a barrier between race, status, and amount of pollution. We need to redistribute the decision-making power back to the vulnerable communities that are systemically impacted by environmental racism.
Here in Marin County, residents enjoy safe streets and clean air throughout their daily lives. However, just 20 to 30 minutes away from Archie Williams, the city of Richmond, which, as of 2022, was estimated to be only 25% white, as opposed to Marin's 85%, struggles with the burdens of industrialization. On Monday, November 27th of this year, large clouds of black smoke were seen billowing from the Chevron refinery in Richmond. Fortunately, this incident wasn't nearly as impactful as others in the area, such as the refinery fire that happened on August 6th of 2012, which sent 15,000 individuals to seek medical care and resulted in a $5 million settlement.
I think we have a live shot here of the refinery. I want to show you this again because what's unique about this is the prevailing winds at this refinery are typically coming in the other direction, so that smoke would blow out towards the Carquinez Strait. Again, this is a power outage, is what we've learned at the Chevron refinery in Richmond. And that what I'm getting at is that smoke's blowing the other way, so it's blowing into Marin.
Since its construction in 1902, the Richmond refinery has had many accidents, endangering and permanently harming its surrounding residents. And it's only one of the large industrial facilities in Contra Costa County.
One of these communities was Woodlawn, Chicago, where Hazel M. Johnson lived with her husband and 7 kids in the 60s. In 1969, her husband John Johnson was lost to lung cancer. This tragic loss, along with several other community losses to lung cancer and the unexplained skin and respiratory issues her children faced, prompted her to look deeper into what was really happening in her community. From there, she learned about the environmental injustices happening in and around her community and about their roots in bias and racism. Johnson began her fight by starting a nonprofit organization called People for Community Recovery. This organization was dedicated to helping better the quality of life for people living in low-income areas and working towards economic equity. People for Community Recovery works to this day to change this country for the better. Hazel M. Johnson worked as a frontman for the environmental justice movement until her unfortunate death in 2011.
The term environmental racism is a little bit more recent. Environmental justice and environmental racism really came to the forefront in the late 80s, I want to say, in like early 90s.
Sociologist Robert Bullard expanded the definition of environmental racism as any policy, practice, or directive that differentially affects or disadvantages, whether intended or not, individuals, groups, or communities based on race.
One of the communities I worked with in the past was the city of Richmond, which has quite a few issues around environmental contaminants that they are working on.
The fight for environmental justice and equality when it comes to pollution still isn't over. Just a 30-minute drive away, Richmond is facing the same injustices that Hazel Johnson fought to fix in Chicago. The Chevron plant alone has caused over 304 accidents between 1989 and 1995, according to a University of Michigan case study. Many grassroots organizations are currently combating this issue, like APEN, the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, which is striving to build community-owned renewable energy resources to power neighborhoods, protect affordable housing so that historic cultural communities can stay together, create a local economy of cooperatives owned and governed by community members, and take back control of democracy.
Local environmental justice group, learning what their priorities are and how that you might work with them to address some of those issues will help increase awareness around some of the most pervasive issues that are affecting communities around environmental health, clean air, and clean communities.
In terms of when you think about that in environmental racism, now we're talking about a disparity between groups as to who has access to the health that is brought by a healthy ecosystem.
According to the Source Global PBC survey, 43% of white Americans say that they are very confident in their tap water, while only 24% of Black Americans and 19% of Hispanic Americans indicate the same degree of confidence.
I think another thing is having access to healthy environments around their homes.
There's certain communities that need more money than others, and those often tend to follow color lines based on historic redlining. Redlining, which is another thing I study as a U.S. history teacher, where historically, land and houses were not sold to people of color. They weren't allowed into the white neighborhoods, and they were forced into redlined neighborhoods. And then later on, they were then forced out of those redline neighborhoods when they built a freeway right through the middle of them. Once these environmental problems hit these communities of color, do they then have the appropriate access to health care? Not only are they getting these health impacts, they're getting less treatment for them.
I would say that this advocacy continues, and youth are usually at the forefront of that.
It's not all on us, right? It's not everyone's fault that's used a plastic spoon before, but it's one thing. Think about the issue from two directions, like grassroots in individual actions, and then sort of top down, like government regulation, right? And it takes pressure from both sides to really solve an issue. Different people can sort of follow their passions and ideas and see where you fit better into that. Like, are you a grassroots activist, or are you an environmental lawyer that's going to be suing? Like where do you fit into that puzzle? I think is a question that someone can ask themselves.